afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have the pleasure to welcoming you at our third already dissemination activity. The objective of our meeting today is to present the results of the education chapter and to launch interactive dashboard with the related to the education chapter data. Education is the third policy area covered by our benchmarking study 2022-25. The study we are doing for and also with in very close cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relations of the Netherlands. Before I present the study objectives, research area, time frame, and of course our team, I would like to thank you very much for finding the time to join us today. As we can see here, our agenda has three major points. I will start what I just said with a short introduction to our benchmarking study objectives, areas, countries cover, as well as the time frame, which means I will present exactly what we are doing in the current year, what we will do in 2025 and 26. And secondly, we will present the research results of the education chapter, and then we will continue with the presentation of our dashboard. And our APA team will show how our interactive tool works, where to find it, what kind of data we can find that, and also how to use it in a very effective way. After this presentation, I will have the pleasure to talk about next step and what will happen exactly what we plan for the next 3 years. And as I already mentioned right in the beginning, we can realize our benchmarking study thanks to the grant of the Dutch Ministry of Interior. We are implementing this project also in a very close cooperation with the ministry. And I have a pleasure to present the project leader from the ministry side, Mr. Frans van Dongen. So thank you very much, Frans, for being with us today. And I would like to give you the floor. So thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ivona. It's great to work with you and the whole APA team on this international benchmarking program on public performance. And I warmly welcome you all at this APA webinar for the study results regarding the public domain education and the launch of the dashboard with the data for this domain. My name is Frans van Dongen, as Ivona explained earlier, and I'm working as a program manager on public performance at the Ministry of the Interior and Kingdom Relations in the Netherlands. And I'm also the ministry's representative in the APA's board of governors and the Dutch member of the steering committee for the European Public Sector Award, the award scheme that was at the final event a couple of weeks ago, where the most excellent best practices of public sector performance were honored with the award scheme. And coming to the benchmark study, the Dutch ministry has a long tradition already in international benchmarking of public performance, going back to the 90s of the century. And we're happy that we could establish a fruitful relationship with APA a couple of years ago to deepen this tradition with an extensive 4 years benchmark program for 35 countries on all public domains. And this benchmark study is not just a study about winners and score lists. No, it is about identifying mechanisms and policy systems, interventions and contexts that are relevant to become more successful and get better public value for money, better outcomes, more efficiency, and more satisfied citizens and entrepreneurs. That's all what we are focusing on. And a part of international learning from best practices, it is also valuable to learn from examples of underperformance or failures it is very helpful to learn why specific mechanisms or interventions or policy systems don't work in specific contexts, and to prevent that these failures will be repeated. Systematically learning from failures is of great value, and that's underestimated in the public administration. In science, it is held for normal to reach success by trial and error, and it's normal business of the day. But in a way, in public administration and other public domains, people are a bit reluctant to learn from failures and to see failures as a step in the process that lead to success. And further, it is of great importance to bring these kind of study results to the attention of policymakers and stimulate them to use them for purposes of policy designs. Policy making on the basis of personal preferences, ideology, and so not based on empirical evidence, that will not lead to success and to excellent performance. And therefore, we welcome very much the initiative of EIPA to organize these kind of webinars to disseminate the study results. We also welcome the initiative, of course, of EIPA to give full, flexible, and user-friendly online access to the data of the study results, and to give all policymakers the opportunity to play with the data and to see how they can tune them for their personal, professional purposes. I'm happy that we will get the demonstration of this dashboard today. So thank you also very much, Miranda and Paolo, for being here and learn us more about this dashboard. And it's also interesting to see that even the European Commission has started initiatives that support this way of working, with the program Building Capacity for Evidence-Based Policymaking, that gives us a kind of confirmation that this is the right way to learn and to share study results for better policies. And lastly, I would like to thank our education research partners, Christophe de Witte, Tommaso Agassisti, Marta Canistra, and of course, Giovanna D'Inverno for their outstanding achievements and with this international benchmark study on education, and especially also Giovanna for her willingness to present the results here. Thank you very much, Giovanna. And I hope you all will have an inspiring webinar, and give the floor back to Ivona, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Frans, for your very kind words and this nice introduction. And I propose that we continue with the presentation of the EIPA kit. So I propose that we go to Miranda, then we present Paolo. So please, if you can take the floor.
Thank you. So I'm Miranda. I work at EIPA as a researcher, mainly in the area of better regulation, actually. But today I'm here because I worked a lot on the benchmarking project, mainly to do with data, and for the dashboard that we're going to present later on.
Hello, my name is Paolo Giovannetti. I'm a research assistant here at EIPA, and I worked on the benchmarking study since the beginning of my time here. First, for what concerned the publication of the public administration chapter, then of course also helped with the preparation of the study from there onwards, and with all aspects related to data visualizations, for example, with the dashboards we will present today. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miranda and Paolo. As you can see on the slides, we also have Bjorn working in our team. Unfortunately, he was not able to join our webinar today, but he's very actively involved also in the preparation of the dashboard. So maybe it's also the turn for me to present myself. I'm Ivona Karvelt, and I'm senior lecturer and also project leader from the APA side of this benchmarking study. And thanks to that, I have the pleasure to work with France, with our APA team, and of course with the best experts from some very prestigious universities, what already Franz mentioned in the beginning. And I propose that we will start with the first presentation. And I will have the pleasure to say quite a few words about the objective and the purpose of our benchmarking study 2020-2025. We agreed already in 2021 with the ministry that our study will analyze the performance of public administration in 10 policy areas and in 35 different countries we see here on the slide. So apart from the European Union 27 member states, we also analyze UK, Norway, Switzerland, and Iceland. And apart from the European countries, we also cover Canada, United States, New Zealand, and Australia. And as I mentioned, we are covering 10 different policy areas. As we can see on the slide, public administration as such, housing, education. We will present this study result today. Social safety, environmental protection, health, sport, culture, economy, social security, employment, income, and wealth. And the 10th chapter we discussed and we decided with the ministry last year in the middle, international best practices in social security systems. And I would like to say that our benchmarking study, it's already the 4th edition of the study. The previous ones were published in 2004, 2012, and the 3rd report was prepared by the Dutch Research Institute, SCP, and published in 2015. Our role, as agreed with the Dutch Minister of the Interior, is to update from one side the 3rd edition, and from the other side is to broaden its perspective. So apart from the update, we also evaluate the effectiveness, efficiency, cost effectiveness, and of all 10 policy areas in depth, as well as satisfaction and trust of citizens in their administration. And because of much more in-depth analysis, we agreed also with the ministry that our benchmarking study 2020-25 will be divided into sub-studies. So we can see here that in 2022, we analyzed 4 policy areas in 35 countries: public administration, education, housing, and social safety. In 2023, we analyzed economy, infrastructure, science, technology, innovation, social security, employment, income, and wealth, and also environmental protection and climate change. In the current year, we are preparing the 3rd sub-study covering health, sport, culture, participation, and 10 policy area social security system. And we plan in 2025 to do the update of all policy areas and publish the final report. The final report we plan to publish after final benchmarking conference, which will take place in February 2026. 6. So during the preparation process, how do we work? Depending on the sub-study, we have 3 or 4 working teams, which include the policy area partners, the ministry, and also APA. And we have coordination meetings between all partners involved in the project, which apart from the authors, also Ministry of Interior, our team, cover and also we have involved specific ministries from Netherlands. We have our coordination meeting. We discuss during those meetings in indicators we will actually use, what kind of content, what kind of visualization should be applied. And we also have, whenever it's needed, coordination meeting between APA, Ministry of Interior, and authors of different chapters, and also separated meetings whenever it's needed between authors and APA team. And as you can see during, and we are in our benchmarking study, do the quantitative and also qualitative analyzing using already existing sources of information. We try to use the data from 2007 until today. Of course, if the data is available coming from World Bank, Eurostat, etc., OECD, etc., and we also use the existing sources of the secondary research. And as already mentioned in the introduction, one of the most important, I would say, element of our benchmarking study is the dashboard, which we are launching today for the education. You could also, and you can find on our website what our team will explain in details a bit later on, dashboard for social safety and public administration chapter. And as we can see that dashboards also, as the sub-study 2022 and 23 are publicly available at APA website and also at ministry website. And when we are talking about our interactive tool, we are updating all the time the data, and we are doing that in 2023. We are doing that constantly in 2024 and 25. Where to find this information? Here we can screenshot of the APA website, and you can see that the first on the left, when the it's mentioned public sector benchmarking. When we open this, we click there, we find all the information related to and we can download as well our sub-studies. We can find information about our dashboard, and also we can find all information about our planning dissemination activities. So I would like to invite you to enter there and to find all interesting information we can maybe which is of our interest. So I would propose, I would like to thank you and for your attention, and would like to propose that we go into the presentation of the study results. And I have had a pleasure to present our speaker, Miss Giovanna D'Inverno, and she is a tenure track assistant professor in mathematical methods for economic, actuarial science and finance, Department of Economics and Management, and University of Pisa. I have to say also from our side that it was a real pleasure to work during this year together with you and the education team. And I would like to express our gratitude for you to be with us today. So thank you very much. And I would like to also give you the floor to present the education chapter results. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivona. Thanks, Franz, for your kind words of appreciation. The pleasure was mutual indeed. The work that I'm going to present now, it's indeed the result of a joint collaboration which we all enjoyed very much indeed. So I hope you can see the screen. So the goal of this study was indeed to assess the performance of the educational system. And what we were aiming at was to provide a multidimensional perspective. So to provide in a simple and intuitive way information to decision maker, and most importantly, to enhance the discussion within the countries of our analysis. So we divided the study in two parts. Of course, due to time constraints, we won't be able to cover it all. So for this, I invite you to read the report, or if you have read already, please give us your feedback. So we divided it in two parts. So the first part was to document mainly the features of all the countries under analysis under many different indicators. So to give an overall perspective of the general performance in terms of education. The second part was about statistical analysis to assess effectiveness and efficiency of the educational systems. Efficiency defined as the ability of reaching a certain provided output given the minimal cost. So to go beyond just the pure comparison of raw indicators, but rather to exploit the complementarities and the trade-offs arising from all these indicators. Now, of course, to give meaningful interpretation of the results, we have to provide the general framework. So any policy intervention is concerned to reach a certain goal, and this applies, of course, to education as well. Now, to reach a certain goal, resources are invested to produce certain results by promoting some activities, and this applies to the education as well. So human and financial resources as expenditure per student, so student to teacher ratio, are used so to produce some results in the form of increasing participation to education, for instance, and this is seen to be as an output, so an immediate consequence of the implementation of some activities, or outcomes, so results that we can observe in the medium and longer term. The relationship between outputs and outcomes with the inputs define our measure of efficiency. Now, let's just go very briefly over the general performance analysis. So with respect to the expenditure, we observed that across all the education levels, the expenditure was rather stable, and especially for tertiary education. What was interesting to observe is that more resources are dedicated to secondary education rather than primary education. And this is an interesting point to highlight, because early investments have been proven to be important to compensate differences in socioeconomic status. So, for instance, if we take the case of the Netherlands, we see that it invests 2.1% of GDP in secondary education and only 1.7% for primary education. As a proxy for the intensity of funding relative to the size of the educational system, we can observe the education per student. And this conveys very important information, because we can see that countries like Luxembourg or Norway invest more than 10,000 euros on average per student, as opposed to countries like Romania and Bulgaria, which invest barely more than 2,000 euro per student. What we observed, though, is that over time there has been an increasing percentage of investment exactly in those countries that were investing the least at the very beginning. So this is an important signal nevertheless. Moving quickly to the output side, we can observe, for instance, the enrollment rate, which is one of the proxy for the universal nature of educational system. So it gives the degree of how many students are entering in the education system, and this is a very important information. So we can see that countries like Slovenia, Belgium, and Ireland are the countries who report the highest enrollment rates, as opposed to Canada, Austria, and Luxembourg, for instance, who report the lowest rates. Interesting remark is that Central and Eastern European countries show decreasing enrollment rates. So this is important to signal and to take action, actually. Of course, also we described also other indicators in terms of outcomes, for instance, PISA test scores in terms of mathematics, reading, and science, or other non-cognitive disciplines, for instance, test scores in terms of attitude towards the social rights, equal rights. So, and you can find this further information in the report. Now I want to move to the second part of the analysis, which is it's even less common to see in reports provided by some institutions, for instance. So to explore the multidimensional approach and how each indicators relate to each other. So performance can be measured along two main dimensions, as we were mentioning also before. We can measure effectiveness, defined as the overall level of education provided by a country, measured by aggregating all the output indicators all together and synthesizing one representative index. How aggregated? By weighting the more the dimensions in which each country is performing, the better. In this sense, effectiveness refers to measuring how they are doing the right things. So whether they're promoting the right activities to provide the right output and the desired outputs. On the other hand, we have efficiency, which measures how effectiveness relates to inputs. So how well countries are dealing with their resources to produce the provided level of output in terms of education. Of course, so this is just a graphical intuition to give you the flavor of the tool that is behind the measurement of efficiency and effectiveness. So effectiveness and efficiency scores are obtained and computed by compared observed countries, so observed educational systems, against the evaluated observations best found in the class. So imagine that here all these dots are the countries under evaluation. So basically we can say that our best practices, so the countries, the educational system we should look at are those countries for which it's impossible to either produce more output given the level of resources they are using, or it's impossible to reduce the level of resources they are using given what they are producing in terms of output. On the contrary, we will say that an educational system is inefficient, say for instance, this country K, that is inefficient because given what is using in terms of resources, at K for instance, it could produce more output, or it could, given the level of output it's producing, it could reduce its level of input simply by looking at what the best practice along this red line are producing, okay? So the farther you are from this best practice frontier, the more inefficient you are, or the least effective you are in what you are producing, okay? Of course, what determines the measurement of efficiency and effectiveness, it's crucial, the definition of the inputs and the outputs. So the choice of inputs and outputs has been determined by the literature dedicated to the education, and also, of course, to the availability of the data. And this is also a signal to policymakers to collect the right information to provide meaningful analysis. All the outputs have been chosen for each educational stage targeting the aim of each educational stage. This is the reason why, for instance, for early childhood, the first stage is the participation rate in early childhood and the percentage of disadvantaged pupils that attended childhood education, because this is the main goal of childhood education, right? On the opposite, for instance, if we look at tertiary education, we focused on graduates for tertiary education and the employment rate as the outputs that we expect to see and countries to work on to provide a good educational output in the tertiary sector. Now, we will just go very briefly in the interpretation of the main results. Of course, we cannot cover all the stages, but I just want to give you the flavor of what we can learn from this analysis, okay? So first of all, both efficiency and effectiveness analysis gives us scores ranging between 0 and 1, where 1 detects the best practices. So, and here countries are sorted by the median values of the estimates that we had running the analysis between 2015 and 2018. And we can see that the best performing countries in terms of effectiveness are United Kingdom, Hungary, France, and Belgium, the Netherlands, for instance, while at the bottom of the ranking, we have Slovenia, Finland, Greece, and Slovakia. I want to emphasize, as Franz also mentioned before, that this is not a system of shame, but it's just to learn from the others and to see where we can improve and learn from our failure, as Franz was mentioning before. For instance, here the case of Finland was very interesting for us also to dig deeper in, because this low number in terms of output provision in the level of childhood care in Finland is simply because in the 90s, the Finnish system promoted a policy that could either offer childhood care at home, so an allowance, or a place at the daycare. So of course, this reflects the choice of the parents to keep mostly the kids at home, okay? So behind numbers, there is always a policy rationale of why we are observing this. So, and if we consider also the resources, we see that the most efficient countries are United Kingdom, Greece, and the Netherlands, while the least efficient countries is Poland, Finland, and Sweden. These also reflect the fact that reaching higher quality education is increasingly more expensive. So we should keep this in mind when looking at the investment countries do on education. Then we found interesting to combine these two aspects being two sides of the same coin, basically. So we observed the effectiveness and efficiency and cluster countries depending on this combination of efficiency and effectiveness. And indeed, we can observe that there are some patterns across the countries that we observe. For instance, we can see that on average, Southern European countries are above the median level of efficiency because usually they tend to invest less in education, as opposed, for instance, for Western European countries that are found the most effective ones. Also in this quadrant, we can identify the countries who are the best practices in terms both of efficiency and effectiveness. In this case, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Spain. Now, just to give another picture, we can look at secondary education, for instance, and we can see, interestingly, that the best practices change depending also on the stage that we are observing, emphasizing the fact that countries can learn from each other also across the stages of education. In this case, we have Estonia, United Kingdom, and the Netherlands as the most efficient and most effective. I would like to point out of the cases of Bulgaria and Romania. If you remember, I mentioned it before already when discussing the expenditure per student. So in fact, they are known in the literature as the private educational system, meaning that they tend to be quite efficient, but this is because they really invest little in terms of education, and therefore there might be enough to invest just a little bit more to boost the overall level of education output. What we can learn also from this analysis is who is the best practice I should mostly look at to improve, or at least I should consider the activities they promote. And this is, for instance, we saw before that the Netherlands is among the best practices, but still there is Estonia and the United Kingdom that, for instance, we could look at in terms of efficiency. And indeed, this is the result that we observe. So, and this suggests how much we could potentially reduce in terms of input, and also how much we could potentially increase in terms of output. And this we have for all the countries observed in our sample. So just to conclude, of course, investment in education represents an investment in society, and we are all here because we strongly believe this. What is the main take-home message out of this analysis is that just adding resources to the education system does not necessarily lead to higher educational outputs. So do not lead to higher test scores. So rather than focusing on monetary resources, we would rather more emphasize the role of the organization of the education system and to learn from the policy and the activities promoted by the best practices. And which are these policy levers that we could activate? For instance, improve the quality of the teaching, to promote school infrastructure, so to ameliorate the infrastructures of the schools, as it has been shown to be that the learning environment matters and favorably affects the learning process. Or we could improve the differentiation and adaptive learning in terms of digital skills, or else we could boost the school's autonomy so that each school can provide more targeted activities for the specific needs. Or, for instance, a very important role as played by the parents. So how we can involve parents in the educational process, or how to improve the access to preschool, as it has been shown to be an instrument to improve the equity of the educational system. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. And I hope to get your feedback and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giovanna, for this very interesting presentation. And it was a pleasure. It's a pleasure that you are with us here today. And I propose, if everybody agrees, that we go to the next presentation. And I would like to invite our APA team to present the Related to Education chapter dashboard. So thank you, and please.
Thank you. So before I start presenting the dashboard, I just want to say again that the team was with Paolo and Bjorn, who's not here, and we worked to make sure that you can interact and explore the data that was discussed today. I want to sort of show you through a typical journey through the dashboard, but first starting from our website. Ivona mentioned already that you can click on the public sector benchmarking tab on our website, and this will take you to a general page about the study, the whole study from 2022 to 2025. All updates are here on this section. You can learn a little bit more about the study itself. Today we're talking about the education chapter, which was published in the benchmarking study 2022 sub-study. But we recently launched the 2023 sub-study, so we invite you to also check that out. Moreover, you can see our upcoming events, and here last year we published the public administration dashboard. You can rewatch the event and also explore the dashboard. Similarly, the same for social safety. Today, of course, we're talking about education. And then there are quite a few other dashboards that we will launch the rest of the year. So visit our website so you can have the latest information. So today, of course, we're talking about education. So I'm going to go to the education tab, and you can see a little bit more. And of course, our dashboard is presenting the study results that we just discussed. So here we have the dashboard, and there are two journeys through the data, through exploring the data, either using the stylized version of the framework. You can go through the chapter step by step, or you may be interested in investigating the indicators and comparing countries in a much more free way. And in that, you can go to the indicators and country comparison section. But Paolo will explain a bit more about that later. I'm going to start off by discussing, just showing you through the step-by-step journey. So say I'm interested in looking at the inputs in education, then I can click here on that, and I'm first sent to a description page, which sort of provides a definition for input in the context of education. And then I may be interested in the annual expenditure per student, for example, and by clicking on that, I will get to the page for that. Here you see it lands on Austria. So we can see the over time, the development in annual expenditure per student in primary education and also in secondary education. All of the information in this dashboard, in this section of the dashboard, presents the country itself, but also the regional average and the average of the countries that all the countries that we studied for the benchmarking. So you can see, for example, the Austria trend is increasing, very similar to the regional average, Western Europe, and here we have the sample average. But I may be more interested in looking at what's happening in the Netherlands. And so here I can just navigate, and you can see the difference here. So the framework on the first page is also sort of, again, in a more stylized version, is at the bottom of the screen. And this can be used as a navigation tool to jump between the various elements. And so I might also be interested in the outcomes. So I can just click here at the bottom. Again, I land on the description page with a good explanation about what outcomes are in this context. And I may be interested in the PISA test scores, which Giovanna mentioned. And here, again, we have the different elements, and you can switch between different tabs and explore. So I'm going to hand back to Paolo.
Thank you very much, Miranda. So we now continue our sort of guided journey through the data, and the next section is about performance. So as it was mentioned by Giovanna just a few minutes ago, the performance in the domain of education was analyzed by looking at and measuring efficiency and effectiveness, as explained on this page. And then on the following 2 pages, we have more details and definitions in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, and some important concepts as well. After these 2 pages, we can go right into the actual results with the data displayed here by means of a line chart. And this is both for effectiveness and efficiency. And we also have the rankings for the selected countries. So for example, here, Austria ranks 12th in terms of effectiveness in early childhood education, and ranks 10th in terms of efficiency. Then, of course, we can also click through the different educational levels, as you can see, and see how countries are doing in each of the educational levels. Then, if we go to the next 2 pages, we have here an analysis in terms of efficiency and specifically for secondary education. And so here we have the main results. So on this page, we have two input indicators. So the first one is about government expenditure on education as a percentage, actually on secondary education to be more precise, as a percentage of GDP. And so then what we can see here is the target. So we should see this as the ideal level in terms of expenditure, in this case for Austria. And this is not the observed level, but an ideal level that would represent a more efficient use of inputs. And on the right-hand side, we can see, given that we're talking about inputs, how much the expenditure could be reduced in order to achieve a more efficient observation in terms of expenditure. And so in this case, the reduction would amount to 0.51%. And similarly, this applies also to the other indicator on teachers to student ratio. Then on the last page of the performance section, we have two output indicators. The first one is about math test scores. And again, here we have the target observation for, again, Austria, and which should be seen as the most efficient math test score that could be achieved in terms of output efficiency. And given that here we're talking about increase, about outputs, we're talking about a potential increase in the test scores. Well, actually for Austria, here we see that the value equals 0, meaning that it's, let's say, behaving efficiently when it comes to outputs, in particularly to test scores, so there cannot be any further potential increases. But maybe for other countries, it's different. And we have, for example, with Belgium, we have a very small potential increase. But again, if we look at the completion rate, there is no potential increase. So it's the observation is efficient. So with that, we have a bit completed our journey through the more guided route we can take in terms of the data and the findings of the study. And we can go to the last page we will present, which is quite an important page. And as you can see, it's also quite different in terms of how it looks, because it has a different purpose, which is to be able to allow the user to have more freedom and flexibility when it comes to navigating through the data and how to visualize it. However, still this is, let's say, guided somehow by the conceptual framework in terms of the choice of the 4 different groups of indicators. We have inputs, outputs, outcomes, and performance, which we've just presented. So let's say that we're interested in the outcomes. And so here we will have all the list of outcome indicators. And let's say we're interested in the percentage of 25 to 64-year-olds with tertiary education, in other words, with a university degree. So, and we also have the definition here on the right. Then we have, for your information, the unit of measurement. In this case, this is a percentage. And on the bottom, we have also the information about the source from which the data comes from. Then it's possible to choose the regions you're interested in. By default, all are selected. But of course, you could focus only on maybe even one region or 2 regions. And then it's possible to select as well the countries you would like to visualize. again, all are selected, but you could choose one country, two countries, basically as many or as little as you'd like to. Then we have the time frame selection. So in order to be able to focus on any particular time period you're more interested in. And so as you can see, if we switch it, then the data changes. And I should also mention that this time frame selection, let's say, is automatically updated or automatically changes according to the data availability for the selected indicator, because it's not always the same. So for example, if here we choose a different indicator, then we will have a different time frame. With that, we can move to the left-hand side of the page, where we have the possibility to choose from 4 different visualizations. The first one, as the name suggests, is about giving a general overview of how countries are doing in the selected indicator, in terms of the selected indicator. And this is basically presents the average over the selected time frame. But then if you're interested in, let's say, looking at the data in a more detailed way, we have a detailed value table. And here you have visualized all of the different years for which the data is available. Then the last 2 types of visualizations are for those of you who are more visually inclined. And again, here all countries are selected, but and so it's a bit cluttered. But of course, you can always decide to focus on a particular region. For example, Western Europe, so it would be easier maybe to look at countries singularly, but then you could also do it further by choosing maybe even 2 countries, so that the comparison is even more evident. With that, well, let's select all the countries again, and all the regions again, and the countries, and then we can move on to the final visual, which is a map, as you can see, to allow for an even more evident or clearer geographic comparison. So as you can see here, countries are shaded according to the value of the chosen indicator. And so a darker color corresponds to a higher value. And in this case, it's a positive thing, because we're talking about the percentage of basically adults with a university degree or even postgraduate education, meaning that it's a positive outcome indeed. And so then you can even zoom in and look at any particular region that you're more interested in. And finally, I would like to attract your attention to the bottom right of the page, where we have 2 boxes with information about countries with the highest and lowest value and countries with the largest increase and decrease. So this is in line a bit with the purpose of the benchmarking study, to be able to allow for comparisons between countries and be able to see which countries are performing very well and which countries still have some room for improvement. And of course, this is just, let's say, a very general snapshot of the situation, because it only shows you the top and bottom countries. And so if then you're more interested in more detailed comparisons, you can, of course, look at the various available types of visualizations which I've presented to you. And so with that, we have concluded our overview of and presentation of the education dashboard. We've shown you what is possible to do with it and how the data is presented. And we hope that you will spend some time clicking through it and looking perhaps at the performance of education from a different angle. And maybe this could even be the basis for further analysis and research. And of course, finally, we would like to thank you for your attention, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us should you have any questions or even suggestions for feedback about the dashboard. So thank you very much, and I will yield back to Ivona.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much, Miranda and Paolo, for a great job on this preparation of the dashboard for education and for this interesting and nice presentation. Before we finish, I will very quickly share the information about what exactly is planned for 2024 and 25. As I already mentioned before in the introduction, right now we are preparing for the third sub-study 2024, covering 3 different policy areas. And we plan to publish this sub-study after final conference in February 2025, with one exception, because I wanted to say that the best practices presenting chapter of international social security system, apart from taking part of the sub-study 2024, will also be published on WEI EIPA and ministry website in May, so much earlier. And as I already mentioned, we will have a pleasure to work also with Giovanna and the whole team in 2025, because education will be one of all chapters updated in 2025, and we will present the final report and final conference in February 2026. But it will not be the end of our project, because also in 2026 we will implement another activities like this one today for another chapters. So as I said, we are constantly updated the dashboard, and already Miranda showed where to find the information, how we can register it, etc. I would only quickly like to present upcoming events in the current year. So we still have housing, and it will be last chapter from the sub-study 2022, and the event will take place on the 20th of June. And then we will also, in the second part of this year, present economy chapter and social security. And the first one will be presented, will take place on the 26th of September, and the second from 2023 sub-study chapter on social security on the 27th of November. And well, all the information is on our website. I also would like to invite you to visit our public sector benchmarking section on EIPA website, and to check all the information of the sub-study 2022 and 23, our dashboard, and also the information about the dissemination activities. And also from my side, I would like to thank you very much for being with us today and wish you a nice afternoon. And I hope to see you soon on the 20th of June when we present fundings of housing chapter and dashboard. And thank you very much also, Franz and Giovanna, to be with us and for your presentation, and of course, Miranda and Paolo. So thank you, everybody, and hope to see you soon.